Okay. Oh, how exciting this is. I always get so excited.
Yeah.
Wow. Lisa M. Bolt Simons.
Hello.
It's wonderful to see you again. We
Wonderful
met
to
at
see
the
you.
we met at the SCBWI meeting in New York in February.
Correct.
It took us 6 months to find one another.
Yes.
And here you are. We're going to talk about three new children's books.
Yes.
Curious, and I'm curious about hockey and I'm curious about soccer, but
Yes.
I'm perhaps even more, more. That's a good cue to show the books, yes. And and I'm even more curious to learn about your book, I think from last year from Capstone
Yes.
on the Northwest Passage expedition.
Correct. There it
Yeah.
is.
So I'm just going to say that my name is Mel Rosenberg, and I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel for the New Books Network. And my guest is the prolific, that's not even the right word, super prolific, magnum cum laude prolific, Lisa M. Both Simons. So, Lisa, welcome to the show. Briefly about the three books that are brand new, the six ones that you're working on, and the 50 others that you've written. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Um, well, the summer's been really busy, Mel. That's one of the reasons why it's been hard to get together. I continue to write work for hire books, and I still work for Capstone, although these other books are actually with two other publishers. My first book that I ever wrote was about the Minnesota Wild, and I have circled back to that publisher. They're called the Creative Company. Now, I can't tell you what those books are, Mel. I'm sorry to, yeah, I know they're secret until they come out next year.
There's only 10,000 people listening, Lisa.
Oh, yeah. So it's a secret. So those 10,000 people are going to have to wait till they come out next year. So I'm working on 3 titles with them. And then I'm working on 3 titles with kind of a imprint of theirs called Amicus. And so 4 of those are these typical kind of shorter books. These are generally for the primary elementary level, about 2nd, 3rd grade, but 2 of them are actually going to be for the middle grade, middle school, high school level. They're 5,000 words. So those 2 were pretty intense. So I'm waiting for the editor to get those back, and then I will be revising those and getting those back to her by September. So those will also come out next year. So those are the 6. And actually, Mel, now that I say that, I have also just turned in a 7th book, and that is a middle grade fiction book. I have 4, actually. I'll grab those real quick. These are my 4 middle grade novels, and they're sports books. They're the Choose Your Own Path books. And this is hockey and baseball and soccer and football. And I just turned in my basketball book. And that actually should be out because my editor does a really quick turnaround, and he's a small press. That actually should be out before Christmas. So keep an eye out on that. So
We'll
I've
have to
been
have you back.
busy.
We'll have to have you back.
I've been busy, Mel.
Yeah. So most of the authors that I interview have not chosen this career path of work for hire. So
Yeah.
I want you to tell us about this. But before that, a few words about this intriguing book about the Northwestern Passage.
Yes.
I grew up in Canada. I was
Oh,
intrigued.
yeah.
A few words about this, please. How did this
So,
happen? Because it's not, they probably ended up by eating each other. I say it's not a subject, and then you made it into a subject, and it's a
yeah,
graphic novel for young kids. Talk
yeah.
about it. Show us pictures.
Um, it
How
is,
did it happen?
well, it's work for hire. And I want to make sure I clarify this for your listeners is work for hire is when the editor sends you a list of books, and this is from the Deadly Expeditions. And she says, how would you like to write a book about a deadly expedition? And you're like, do I want to write a book about a deadly expedition? And you have a choice, as in, do you want to write about one of these 4 books? And you're thinking, well, I don't really want to write about these, but I do need to pay my bills. Mel, yes, you do want to pay your bills, right? And so I said, well, sure. I will write about the Northwest Passage Arctic expedition. And you pick one that you think might be the most interesting, per se. And I had never written a graphic novel before. Mel, this is a graphic novel. I had never written a graphic novel. And by this time, I had probably written about 40, 45 books. And I had never written a graphic novel. And I was nervous. I was not scared, but I was nervous because this was going to be a challenge. Because with these other books, and we'll talk about the hockey one later, this is just text, right? But this one, for a graphic novel, you have to write dialogue, you have to write narration, and you have to write illustrator notes. I didn't know Eugene Smith was going to be my illustrator because I did not draw this. Mel, I can draw stick people barely. Okay. So Eugene Smith was my illustrator. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I had to draw illustrator notes. 3 components. This was beyond what I had normally written before. I was really nervous.
So you went on an expedition of your own.
I did, Mel. Thank you. That was awesome. I did have to go on an expedition of my own, but because I was working with my editor, who I had worked with several books, she was like, you can do it. And I said, I am up for the challenge. And Mel, it was a challenge, but I ended up loving it. This was such a great experience for me. And kids love graphic novels. And yes, they do end up eating each other. Now, because this is a children's book, Mel, we had to be very diplomatic about how we wrote that. And I'm pretty sure maybe we didn't even really write that until the back matter. But this was fascinating. And because of the research that I did, I was able to put in dialogue and get some of the real people. And because of their names, I was like, oh, my son played hockey with a Dunn. So I'm going to put Dunn in here. And my daughter's name is Jerry. One of the characters is going to be named Jerry. So that's what's fun about fiction. So you can do that. But yeah, it was this was.
But this is not fiction.
Yeah, it is. It's historical fiction.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to make up the dialogue.
No, I know, but isn't it historical nonfiction? I mean, the expedition happened. It's based on events.
It is. But I mean, all of the dialogue, it's historical fiction, right? So it's based on what happened. But I had to make up what was, men, it is a somber time, but summer is upon us. Let us hope for melting ice. I mean, we don't know that they said that. The only thing that they found was a note. That's it. That's all they found was a note. And then they didn't find the ships.
A note that they had revised because they'd written one note and come back a year later and updated it. Yes. More people have died.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't find the ships until I think it was 2014, 2016. Yeah, they found the Erebus in 2014 and the Terror was found in 2016. So they're still trying to figure out what the heck happened.
It's incredible. And at least I can tell, like, it's really interesting to read it. And what it's meant for kids who are about 8 years old.
So the reading level, the interest level is 3rd through 5th grade. Yeah. But I get passionate about this because I flew to Cambodia last year And you know how in the seats they have the maps? And we ended up flying over the Arctic. And all of a sudden, Mel, this map, we were flying over the Arctic. And I was like, oh my gosh, we are flying over their path. And I wanted to tell all my friends that I was flying to Cambodia with, they were sleeping. Oh my gosh, I was so upset. But then when they woke up, I said, oh my gosh, you guys, we flew right over the path that they traveled. I was so excited because I recognized the map. And so when I do school visits, I tell kids, when you do research and you actually live that experience, how cool it is to have that lived experience. So I recognize that map that I had done research. I just, and hopefully, because obviously I get a little animated. And so it was just really neat for me to have done that research. So yeah, I loved doing this book. It was hard, but I loved doing
Is there like when you're a research student, right?
Mhm.
And you do a project, a study, a thesis with a professor. At the beginning, it's his project.
Right, right.
Then some morning you wake up and you say, "Oh, it's my project now."
Yeah.
Does
Oh
this
yeah.
happen to you when you're writing?
Oh, for
Because
sure.
you get the brief from Capstone,
Yep. Yep.
and at some stage you're doing research. You say, "Oh, this is now mine. I own this."
Yeah. And what's ironic, because this is a work for hire, right? You get one flat fee. I don't get, it doesn't matter how many books they sell. This is not, even though my name's on it, this is not my book. I don't own it. But I did the work for this. I did all the research. I wrote everything for this. And so this is still my baby, right? And I'm very proud of this. I feel so good about writing this. This was a this was a big deal.
Yeah, I loved it, and as much as you can love a book about the cannibalism, but no, I'm joking. It's really it's a remarkable story, and so because I know you a little tiny bit,
Mhm.
I'm thinking of you in terms of someone who wants to live a life with a lot of significance and meaning, especially for young children.
Oh yeah.
And I know a little bit about your biography, which is poignant. Would you like to share a little bit? Because I think that maybe that's part of what makes Lisa M. Bolt Simons Lisa M. Bolt Simons.
Well, I was born the daughter of an Air Force pilot. He was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States. And he used to fly the demonstration team, the Thunderbirds. And they have a friendly competition with the Navy Blue Angels. And again, stationed at Nellis, gone a lot. He started as the narrator, and then the second year he was the slot pilot. So if you're looking at the diamond, the commander, the wings, and then he was the back in the diamond. And so he flew that in 1972, and they finished the season usually in November. And then on December 21st, 1972, the guy who usually they take the red, white, and blue planes and ship them off to get them all shiny and squeaky clean for the next season. And they borrow planes. They call them the lizards. They're camouflage jets. And at the time it was the F4. And there was a crew chief who wanted to take this plane, and they have to do a flight to make sure that they are good to test because are good to fly for the training. So they train in January, February, and March. And the guy who usually does that flight, he was already gone. So my dad stepped up and said, I'll just take it out to test it. And very tragically, the wing was broken. And about 12 minutes into the flight, he and Chuck in the back seat were killed. So he was 30 years old, and my dad was 30 and I was 3, and my little brother was 2. And so here is a picture of my dad sitting in his jet. And that, of course, changed the trajectory of my life. I stayed in Las Vegas with my mom and my brother for a few years. And then she moved us to Colorado. And she ended up marrying another man. And my brother and I got adopted. And that was not the best scenario. And I needed to get away. And I left and went to Iowa for college and met a guy.
One
And
second, hold on. Oh, what did you study in Iowa?
I actually studied English and journalism. I thought I was going to be a broadcast journalist. And I had two
And
pretty,
if I remember from your biography, you were always a reader.
oh my gosh, voracious. I'm in two book clubs. I still love to read. Obviously, my bookshelves. I have two bookshelves downstairs. Love to read, always have loved to read. But I thought I was going to be a journalist. I thought the anchor thing wasn't really working. I thought I could be a producer because producers have to write. But I had two internships and they were not good. The one in Des Moines, 3 children fell into a river, 3 siblings, and the producer was calling them fish bait, and that was horrible. And then I had one in Colorado, and at Colorado Springs, we went over to the Air Force Academy where my dad had gone and where he's buried. And we went over, and the Thunderbirds always fly every year over the graduation. And we filmed, and then we were heading back to the station, and the photographer turned to the reporter and they said, well, all we need is a Thunderbird to crash. And I didn't say anything, Mel, and I should have said something. And I should have said, I'll show you where a Thunderbird is. Turn around and let's go to the cemetery. But I didn't. And I just said, you know what? If you want bad things to happen, journalism is not for me. So when my husband and I got married and in Colorado at the Air Force Academy, and then we moved to Minnesota, and I decided I wanted to go into education, and I went into teaching, and I became a teacher. And about maybe 15 years ago, I took a class at the Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis, and she was teaching how to write books for children. And I thought, you know what? This is how I can combine my education and my writing. And I really wanted to write books. All of these books back here are these ones that go into the school libraries. And I thought, there's so many kids, because I've generally worked in schools where there's the low socioeconomic status for these kids, and they can go into libraries and not have to pay for their books. My children were pretty lucky. We could go to a Barnes and Noble every once in a while and buy them a book. But so many of my students, I taught English as a second language, or English as a fourth language, or English as a fifth language. They couldn't afford books, but they could go into a library and get my books. And so that was really important to me. And here I am 70 books later. The thing is that, again, these are the books where the editor says, do you want to write a book about this? And again, these are the books that have been paying my bills so far. But I have also been working on my heart work projects. I have about 15 picture books that I've written. I'm working on a young adult novel right now. I just won a grant to work on my memoir. It's about my dad. And those are my heart work projects. And those are books that I'm trying to get out in the world that no one has told me to write. Those are the books that are from my heart that I've written for myself. And someday I'd like to get out in the world as well.
Okay, so we'll come back to that.
Okay.
How did you, so I'm guessing that these were the age of children that you taught as a teacher, like
Yeah.
8 to 10.
Yeah.
So every interview, I share my theory that we get stuck at writing at the age that we are stuck at. So are you stuck as an 8-year-old? You don't have to answer that.
It depends. Sometimes I act like an 8-year-old. I don't know. My twins, I have twins, and they sometimes think that I'm, a little weird. And I was just informed by my daughter that her boyfriend thinks I'm a little weird, but I think my soon-to-be daughter-in-law thinks I'm okay. So I don't know.
Well, I've met you and you're terrific.
Oh, well, thank you, Mel. I appreciate that.
So how did this happen? So you took the course, but
Yes.
it's hard to give gigs. How did you get this gig, the first gig for your
My
first?
first gig, let me grab that book. My first gig.
It's incredible. You've written 70 books. You know where each one is. That's very good.
Well, I kind of
Uh,
did it chronologically.
well done. Good
Well,
thing I didn't ask you for book number 39. Okay.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Not that way, but
All right.
but
Yeah.
this was kind of fun. This one actually says writing from the heart. But we were
Mhm.
in our local paper. That's when my son was like third grade. But this was my first book, Minnesota Wild. So I took the class, and she brought in, back then there was more of the hard, the catalogs rather than the websites. And so she brought in the Creative Company, which is based out of Minnesota. And I was looking through there, and I saw the football books, and I saw the baseball books, and I wrote them, and I said, I was a hockey mom. I am a hockey mom, I guess, at the time. And I don't see any hockey books. How could I write some hockey books? And they wrote back and they said, you know what? They're just about to come out. Thanks, but no thanks. And I said, okay. But a month later, the editor, Aaron, wrote back and he said, guess what? We did not do one on the Minnesota Wild, and we have someone in Minnesota who would like to buy about 2,000 books. How would you like to write that book? But you need to do it in a month. Well, okay. So and this was actually a middle grade book. So this was about 5,000 words. And I went downstairs to my son, who was third grade at the time, and I said, so, Anthony, an editor asked me to write a book about the Minnesota Wild. What do you think? And his jaw just dropped. And he goes, oh my gosh, Mom, yes, write it. And I went, oh my gosh, what am I? Because I was a full-time teacher and a full-time mom with twins. And I had 2 dogs and I had a husband. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? I barely slept. I probably barely ate. So I would come home from my full-time job, and I would probably put in about 5 hours, 6 hours a night. I would work weekends. I probably pulled an all-nighter a couple times, but I got it done. And it was intense, but yeah,
Can
this
you
was,
can, can you read us the first sentence of your first book?
oh, sure, I could do that. I can do that. On October 11th, 2000, before a crowd of 18,827 fans, dressed in red and green, University of Minnesota hockey legend John Mayasich announced, in the state of hockey, we skate the frozen ponds. We live the game. Welcome to Minnesota. St. Paul Mayor Norm Coleman then dropped a ceremonial puck onto the ice moments before the real puck was dropped.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was quite incredible. And even before this, I had been in graduate school. I had submitted to Capstone, and it took me 7 years to get into Capstone. This took me 3 months. And that's why I have this on my I have tattooed, nevertheless, she persisted, Mel, because about right after Minnesota Wild came out, and I was not right after came out, like right after Aaron contacted me, Capstone contacted me, and I said, did you know about the Wild? And they said, no. So sometimes it's a fluke. That's why I tell writers, you cannot give up. You never know when someone is just going to say, oh my gosh, thank goodness that writer contacted me. I need this person for quilting and they're a quilter, or I need someone who speaks, Chinese, and oh my gosh, they speak Chinese. I need that book on, Chinese history.
That's why I didn't get the contract, is because I don't speak Chinese, I speak Hebrew.
Mm,
But
that,
at least I want to strengthen what you're saying, because after
yeah,
interviewing over 100 authors,
yeah.
it isn't sometimes a fluke, it's usually a fluke.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it
And
is.
it's some kind of happenstance
It
uh,
is.
that you have to be, I wouldn't say not only prepared for, but you have to be banging on doors to make it happen.
Oh,
It,
yes, you do. You really do. It
so
is the,
that's very strong advice. So 70 books later,
yes.
and you're still with the same passion. And you do this without an agent?
Well, work for hire just doesn't pay very much. So I mean, if an agent's taking 15%, there is no reason that you want to have an agent for these. You just don't.
Okay. But
Yeah.
I want to now segue to your heartfelt writing.
Yes. Hmm.
Where probably these days, if it's fiction, if it's from the heart, if it's not writing to a particular market,
Right.
then you need an agent, and the chance of getting an agent is
Very different.
ostensibly 1 in 1,000. Much less for you, or much greater for you, because you are a multi author.
Yes. Well, they have like the query manager, and they have all these electronic. I keep track on, these spreadsheets, and I have a spreadsheet per book. So I have a lot of these papers, and we held a conference in Minnesota, and we did Minnesota, Iowa collaboration. And I got my first agent request on a picture book. And she called it Newberry Caliber, and she wanted it. And I was just thrilled. And then with picture books, of course, you have to send more. And the other two books she just didn't feel as strongly about. And so she ended up, rejecting me. And so I now have it out with, I had it out with 4 other agents, and I just got a rejection yesterday. So it's still out with 3 others, but I have other work out, and it's just one of those things. And some of it's publishers. I also send out work to publishers as well. So I send out and I wait, and that's all I can do. And I do have to show you this, Mel. In order to know that we are working, I have a writers group. And whenever we get rejected, and I got this idea from a friend, a writer friend, we pay ourselves. Anytime we get rejected, this is my rejection rewards. So yesterday when I got rejected, I popped another $1 in here. And eventually I will add this up and, I don't know, buy myself something.
I can already go abroad, I think.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Pay myself for a trip or something. But we just want to make sure we do this, because we want to know that we are pursuing what we want to do. We're pursuing our passion. We're pursuing our heart work. And I don't know.
Well, Lisa, interviewing you is wonderful, because
Oh, thank you.
because of this dichotomy. Let's dwell on this. So you're highly successful. You're sought after as an author of books for, let's say, 8 to 10-year-olds, on sports and many other, and the new one on the
Yeah.
Northwestern Passage. I was going to say cannibals, but I take that back. I love that book, by the way, and I recommend it.
Yeah.
And you're very successful. And then on the other hand, the stuff from the heart is so much harder to publish.
It
But
is.
here's the thing. Those of us who write from our heart, are trying to get somebody to put down $50,000 or $70,000
Yeah.
to publish something that's from our heart,
Right.
not necessarily theirs,
Right.
and to sell it to people. And I think that this is a real challenge.
It is. It
And
really.
so I salute you on two levels, well, on three. On first of all, of coming to terms with your childhood and speaking about it so freely, and what I call recruiting your demons, taking this very difficult childhood
Mhm.
and turning it into something of such great value for many tens of thousands of other children,
Yeah.
and being so optimistic. And that was something that I noted right away when I met you. Let's talk about SCBWI now. You're in charge of Minnesota. A
Yeah.
few words about SCBWI and what it means to you,
I
and what it
joined.
and what it is.
uh, it's Society of Children's Writers.
Society
It's
of Children Book Writers and
book
Illustrators.
writers and yes, and I always think of WI at the end for Wisconsin, so I always know I get that WI right. Which is next door to Minnesota for those who don't know the United States. But um, Minnesota had a kind of a falling out about 3 years ago, and I'm not going to even go into it, but the chapter ended up joining Iowa. So I'm really glad that we kind of joined Iowa, and it still was able to flourish and have some events. But then COVID ended up happening. So, in-person stuff, it was just Zoom things. But I ended up joining probably in 2000, I think 5 or 2008. And I really appreciated, even though I've never won an award or any of those things. I know, right? But I was able to go to some grants here in Minnesota. I was able to go to the LA conference back in, I think it was maybe 11 years ago. I was able to go to a conference, and that was wonderful. I mean, I met Judy Blume, one of my all-time favorite authors from when I met her in the coffee shop line. Oh my gosh, Mel. That made like my life. That was just so awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, this is Judy Blume. And so all of these pieces fell together. I just met wonderful, like, new authors. I got to meet Henry. I met the Fonz. I met Henry Winkler. I mean, it was just wonderful. This great experience. And so just all of those connections. And then I feel like they have a lot of resources. And so after Minnesota kind of fell apart a few years ago, and then just this last fall, they said, we need leadership again. And I wrote my writers group and I said, so I'm thinking about being their regional advisor. And all of them wrote me back. There's 4 of them, 5 of them. And they said, you do not have time. Are you crazy? And I said, I know, but here's the thing. Part of it's selfish, Mel. We have to admit this. I am going to make connections with literary agents and editors if I do this. Plus, I get to go to conferences for free. So, like when I met you in New York, I mean, that trip was free, right? So, I mean, there's some perks.
It wasn't free for me.
Oh,
Um,
sorry.
that's
You're right.
okay.
Yeah. So there's some perks to this. And just being able to make connections. And I just figured that I just kind of needed to do this and get the chapter back and going. So I applied. There were 3 of us. They ended up choosing me. So I'm just very thankful that I can do this. Plus, I know how it started. And as a newer writer, and being able to get some of these resources and events, and I wanted to be able to do that for newer writers where I used to be. So, but I also want to be able to break it up, because there are newer writers, new writers, and there are middle of the road writers. And there are people like me who feel like we're at a space where we don't have agents, but we've published. And so I want to be able to balance out some of these events where we can break it up, but also address anybody. So it's really going to be a challenge, but I've got a really great ARA, a regional assistant regional advisor, and an illustrator coordinator team, but one of them may not be able to join. But it's just I'm looking forward to the challenge.
I'm tempted to join your chapter. But do I have to move to Minnesota?
You might have to move to Minnesota when we have in-person critiques. Mel, is a little distant, but we do have virtual ones. We do have virtual ones.
Okay,
So,
as somebody who grew up in Canada,
yeah, there you go. You're a token honorary Minnesota person.
But I might pass on the winter sessions,
Yeah,
the in-person winter sessions.
yeah.
Lisa, so we've talked about your advice for aspiring authors. You talked about your critique group and being buoyant every time you get a rejection. You've talked about SCBWI.
Not always. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Getting rejected is really hard, but you have to keep persisting. You take it with a grain of salt, and then you just have to.
Yeah, it's absolutely, unless you're a masochist, being rejected is terrible.
It's terrible.
But I love your idea with the dollar bill. I'm going to do that with Israeli shekels, because they're worth much less than $1, so I can, and I get rejected frequently. But so I just had my first book come out a couple of months ago, but I still feel it here in Israel. But so now I'm a traditionally published author, but I still feel like I'm not. And I had this conversation with Julie Hedlund, who was interviewed about a year ago, on being here and saying, okay, but I got to be there. Mm-hmm. Are you here, or do you feel that you're there? Because when I met you, I said, wow, you're incredibly there, but perhaps you feel like you're here, not there yet.
I listened to when we were in New York. I don't know if you remember hearing this, or maybe it was of the virtual one. Everything kind of blurs right now. But she talked about she wanted to make sure that she remembers it's not about getting on the New York bestsellers list. It's not the next award. It's not the Newbery. It's making connections. When she had the mom, she did a school visit, and the little boy brought his mom, to that nighttime event at the school. And the mom had been trying to be a writer. And the mom broke down crying because she had been told, whatever country, that she couldn't be a writer. And then this woman said, you can be a writer and you can do this. And the mom started to cry. She said that was more important than anything else she had ever done. So that's what I want to try to remember. That's what I want to try to remember. And I mean, any of the little kids who have said something to me, that's what I want to try to remember. When I've had little kids listen to me read at some of the schools, that's what I love. So, but I still want to get some of the heart work out. One of the books I've written is an honor to my grandparents. After my dad was killed, we went out to Florida, and my brother and I would build sandcastles on the beach. And that's this book that was the, Newbery caliber that just got rejected yesterday. I really want to get that out because I want to help kids through grief when they lose their parents. So, I just hope that I can get that out someday. So.
And I hope so for you too. So you are, Lisa. So on the one hand, you're totally there.
Yeah.
A super, super accomplished writer of books for children.
Right.
And on the other hand, you're here and not there because you have these heartfelt stories that you want to bring to life that haven't happened yet. And so I'm going to share what happened during my conversation with Julie, which I'm trying to assimilate, not totally successfully, which is that we're always there. We always think about ourselves in terms of being here. You know, I haven't done this yet and I haven't done that. But you know, if you look back 20 years and you say, 20 years from now, I'm going to be sitting and behind me there's going to be 65 or how many books that I've written for children that are being read throughout the world. And you would say, oh, no, that's impossible.
Yeah.
So we have to be a little bit there, especially somebody like you. On the other hand, when you ask authors what their best book is, now if I ask you what your best book is, what are you going to tell me?
You know, I get that question all the time, and I can't pick one, because I have found out, I mean, in all of these, I have learned so much with all the research that I can't pick. So, and I mean, when I do a hockey book, I think of my son. And when I do soccer books, I think of my kids.
So your best book is essentially the one that you're writing.
Pretty much, probably. Yeah.
And many of us are like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Lisa, is there anything I haven't asked you? A few words about the other books. We've talked about this graphic novel, which I love so much, but the audience is going to be curious about your curious books.
Well, I just really like this format because I haven't written anything like this before, but I like these because they start with a question. So why are my skates loose, but my helmet tight? So I like this question format, and then there's the answer. So that's that. I just really like this. And this, of course, was great. How early is practice? I mean, when my son was playing hockey, and he had to be at the rink and he didn't have his license yet. Seriously? What time, Anthony? Are you kidding me? And just so this was a cute format. So I have 3 more coming out in this series. So these were kind of fun. Yeah. And then I do send these, whoever helps me with these books, I get them a free book. So these were fun. So yeah. So
Wonderful.
No, we're good. Yeah, thank
Lisa,
you for having me, Mel. This was fun. I love the Zoom that you're in Israel and I'm here. I'm one of my best friends from college. Her daughter's living in Jerusalem. So I can't wait to tell her that I was in Israel today. Kind of.
And I was in Minnesota, but it's in the middle of August, so that's no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. It's rainy today,
let's talk in February.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you February.
Yeah, no, okay. So Lisa, we're going to say goodbye to everybody.
Okay.
And then I want you to go out and come back in because there's 2 secrets that I haven't shared that I want to share with you. We don't have to share all our secrets with everybody.
Okay.
And I'm going to thank you. We've been speaking to the wonderful, delightful Lisa M. Both Simons, who has written so many books that she can't keep track of how many they are, and still has dreams of her heartfelt picture books. And Lisa, you are such a wonderful human being. It's been great, and author, of course. It's been great to have you on the video podcast. And I'm going to sign off. So I am Mel Rosenberg, the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And I've been here in the studio speaking to Lisa M. Both Simons, the wonderful children's author. So Lisa, we're going to say goodbye to everybody, leave and come back.
All right.
And we'll share a few secrets. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.